So a lot of people hear short seller and they think that you're a bad guy or you're doing something wrong.
Carson Block of Muddy Waters, the investment firm, announced a big short
seller, Carson Block.
We heard from the NYSE president this week, and he said that short selling against a company feels kind of icky and un-American.
Yeah, I've been called a lot of nasty names. I've been called a financial terrorist. I've been called a fraud.
So you have no regrets?
Why would I? Almost every management of a company that's piloted the company into the ground, they blame short sellers. That's completely off base. It's bad managements or managements that have done things wrong, and this is finally catching up to them and the companies. So we focus on companies around the globe that are generally doing something they shouldn't be doing. Bribing officials, stealing money from the company, getting kickbacks, all kinds of bad behavior. Since so few people are actually materially punished for wrongdoing in companies these days, probably the best disincentive that you can offer is for them to lose some money when the wrongdoing is outed. I like to refer to this as market-based prosecution. That's what we're pushing for every time we do one of our shorts. OSI Systems has been around for a long time. Its founder is still the CEO, Deepak Chopra, not that Deepak Chopra. Post 9/11, one of the businesses they had acquired called Rapiscan has experienced a substantial amount of growth because it's the company that builds a lot of the scanners that we see in airports to scan checked luggage as well as hand luggage. Rapiscan is part of the security division, and security division was about 60% of total revenue being $961 million. In terms of profit though, the security division is far and away the driver of profits in the company. They have this business line where they're trying to sell these turnkey contracts. 3D scanning of cargo containers. So it's these large scanning devices, put the container on a truck, the truck drives either to or through the scanner, and then that way customs apparently sees a 3D image of everything that's inside the container, so they can see for smuggling or what have you. What a turnkey contract in this case is, a foreign government awards OSI a concession, and the concession consists of OSI providing the equipment and also providing the personnel and training the personnel to operate them.
So telling the street, like, yeah, look, we used to be a business that sold hardware, but now you got to think of us as kind of like a SaaS type company, because we have this like great recurring revenue. You know, we have all these new contracts we're signing in all these wonderful markets.
How does somebody from the outside, who's say a corruption watchdog, easily compare the pricing of that service contract to what it should be? There really aren't good comps there. So it does make it easier to pad that margin and peel money off to pay kickbacks, as well as make a lot more money for the company. So OSI in 2009 acquired a company called S2. And S2 was started by Jonathan Fleming, who had been the chief operating officer of the TSA. So S2 is the division that does the turnkey contracts. When OSI bought S2, S2 was just a business plan and Jonathan Fleming. That's all. So, I know this will sound crazy, but Albania is a pretty corrupt place. And basically an open secret that there was corruption involved in granting this concession to OSI's subsidiary. You've had a member of parliament stand up and give a televised speech on this, and it's been called on TV news the heist of the century. So several months after being awarded the concession, OSI transferred 49% of S2 Albania to a company called ICMS, which is owned by one individual. We believe that he was a doctor, and it's been reported in the Albanian press that he's very closely linked to the Albanian leadership. This should have occurred for some real money. Yet, when they sold this 49% stake, the purchase consideration was Albanian lek 490. 490 Albanian lek, which at the time worked out to about $4.50 US.
$4, not $4 million.
No,
$4.
$4. Exactly. There is no way that you can justify that sort of transaction under those circumstances. I mean, at least if you want to try to justify it and say that we did not break the law. Like, all of this is public documentation that's on the internet, right?
This is the website for the Albanian company registrar.
All right, so from these docs, this is how we see what transfer took place, when it took place.
Rapiscan's 51% stake and ICMS's 49%.
Just when you started to think Albania might be a dysfunctional country, this is pretty cool. So we would expect to see in the income statement a deduction for minority interests. Pre-tax, income taxes, net income, earnings per share. So right here, we'd want to see minority interest, non-controlling interest deduction, and then you would see net income to common. Not there. It appears to us as though their books are not even reflecting that they only own about half of the S2 Albania subsidiary. Yeah, how does that trickle down to the rest of the business? And I think those are questions that somebody really needs to ask anyway. We then look at the Mexico contract, and the Mexico turnkey contract was actually entered into prior to Albania, but there are some things there that are particularly strange as well.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system.
Yeah, fourth time I've called them today. So OSI have refused to provide any of the granular breakdown for the EBITDA margin in Mexico, but based on what we found in the publicly available documents and their disclosures, we can get to a pretty good estimate of the EBITDA. We estimate that in 2017 it was close to 50%, if not more. So you're saying the Mexico turnkey contract is, we estimate, at least 50% of security division EBITDA or 50% of overall company EBITDA? No, that's 50% of overall company EBITDA for 2017. Jesus. So number one, you have to ask, how could this contract from Mexico be so lucrative? How could it have such a high profit margin? So with Albania, we're able to get all of these documents online. There are multiple news reports. Mexico is entirely different. So you really have to do a lot of work in talking with people, and you have to piece together these little fragments of information from these conversations. We've engaged multiple investigators to speak with former people from SAT, which is the tax bureau there, and awarded the contract to get their understanding of what really happened. So we had this one interview from a former SAT official. This guy was very upfront. He also explained that this contract was deliberately oversold in the sense that they said, oh, you don't need humans anymore. With my machines, you won't have to have these people there. And that is a lie. They're just average machines like any other on the market. The only thing that they're selling is this big fat contract, and that they're supposed to give a service that has nothing to do with these x-ray machines, and they're actually not giving. It was just a way to try to justify a high enough price as well as to create a fatter margin for OSI. So with an upcoming election in Mexico and the renewal of the contract, OSI's got to be pretty concerned that this will either come under the spotlight. He doesn't see how SAT would renew this contract. Puerto Rico was the first turnkey contract that OSI won, and it's been controversial from the start. Originally, I'd really also wanted to look at the Puerto Rico turnkey contract, but because of the hurricane, we weren't able to actually send investigators down there. What we do know is that it has been controversial. There's litigation involving this one company called TOS that was either the sales representative, as TOS claims, or was actually a training company, as OSI claims. OSI in that agreement agreed to pay this, quote, training company 2% of the revenue, which based on the expected value of the contract, I estimate was worth basically something between $2,200 and $6,600 per hour. But when you look at that contract, in addition to the oddity of paying
like guys who come in twice a year for 2 days each time, 2 percentage points of your contract. Some of the other oddities were just lengthy reps and warranties about not violating FCPA or any other anti-bribery statutes. It's a little weird if you're just going to be training these guys. I don't think I've ever seen this before in all the contracts I've reviewed, where you actually have the certification regarding compliance with anti-bribery laws. This thing is a 7-clause certification regarding anti-bribery laws. Actually, sorry, it goes on to a second page. 8 parts. There's very little specificity as to the type of training they have to provide. I don't see any schedule to this agreement that lays out what that curriculum is, but there's a lot of documentation around how not to bribe officials. It really looks to me like this contract was geared to incentivize TOS to win business at PRPA, but to create distance between OSI and TOS. So there are a lot of questions that investors should ask about this contract in Puerto Rico and whether it was on the up and up.
The 3 significant contracts they've signed are in Mexico, Puerto Rico, and Albania. So we kind of think once you unpick that and you really look back at what the remaining businesses are, you're left with something substantially less valuable. If this contract from Mexico is torn up, it's absolutely material to the financials, and
if it's renegotiated lower, that's a real cliff.
Yeah, that's a real
cliff. In terms of EBITDA and earnings.
And that's before you take into account any FCPA violations and potential fines that these guys could face.
The DOJ doesn't fuck around a lot on FCPA type prosecutions. The Telia almost $1 billion fine is a great example.
A fine of such a magnitude would be pretty perilous for a company like this. Reputationally, you've got to wonder how many contracts they're going to get in the future if any of these contracts are unpicked.
So, short this because that Mexican contract can go away as of January. That's a big EBITDA and earnings cliff. We look at the facts around Mexico, and we look at what companies done in Albania, and we also have these questions around what happened in Puerto Rico. Looks very dodgy. I'm not going to be naive and pretend that U.S. and European companies do not engage in bribery in countries where it's very common and almost a necessity of doing business, but yeah, I think we do have to ask whether we trust those companies with security.